start with on all of this because we talked
Oh
about
yeah,
biases
like you
and
gave me the.
all those.
All right, we're on live now, I think.
I
Let me
like how you
record it
give me the.
also.
Go ahead.
Yeah, here we are telling jokes again. I feel like YouTube, you guys always catch us telling our jokes, and we don't know when it's coming on. We don't say anything too bad, but it's funny stuff if you get it. I just don't want anybody to steal our material. So
Yeah.
so you guys, welcome back to another Coaches Conversation Cafe. Tuesday, 1 o'clock. I think we hit it on time this Tuesday, so we're all pretty excited about that. We're gonna start out really by going over a topic that to me is a unique topic, and that I feel like as coaches, it's really hard for us to find our blind spots with this. And so as a coach, do you know your biases is the question. And I got to be honest, I feel like we're not always talking about this part as coaches. And one of the things that I want to do today is see like how we can tackle it. I want to talk about what we're talking about first of all, like what is bias, and then I want to talk about what makes it important, and then I want to talk about, okay, how do we do it? How do I manage my biases? And then finally, just some useful ideas about things that we may have done to really kind of help us implement as much as bias free, which I don't, as we'll talk about it, you'll see, I don't really totally believe that that's all the way possible. But how do we manage it? And what's useful to coaches. So we're trying to give the goods today again. And we'll be back every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Just with new topics to help coaches throughout the area. All righty, let me check in here and see what's going on. As we'll talk about it, you'll see I don't really. All right, so I think I'm good to go now. All right. So I'm still managing the YouTube page at the same time, going back and forth. All right. So the first thing that I want to ask is, so what does the bias idea mean? And I'll lead with that concept just to kind of say what I'm thinking. So what I recognize that as coaches for myself, and, I'm in a lot of coach circles, there's always these things that help get us to tilt a certain way, right? And so today I want to talk specifically about with players or athletes. What kinds of things do we do that gets us to tilt a certain way or treat players a certain way? What are those things that are inside of us, or how do those pieces happen to where we end up leaning a certain way? And so just as an example, like I was explaining earlier in a pre-meeting that basically, like, I've noticed myself when, players have a certain kind of personality, I tend to like shy away from them, or don't have a good approach towards them, or have less conversation with them, or less maybe leniency or patience with my coaching with them. And so those kinds of things are, just an example of what, for me, bias would mean in these circumstances with athletes. I kind of want to, check in and see for the two of you coaches, like how do you see bias, or what's kind of your overall definition that you're thinking in your mind today? Coach Buckley, I'll go with you first.
Well, thanks, Isaac, for having me on again. I think for me, it's a journey. And I think especially, I've been coaching the coaching realm for over 40 years, right around 40 years or more, and been involved with it. And I know that, when I started, you don't even realize that you have biases, but then when you can sit back and reflect, and I think, one of the things that really, in the beginning, it was kind of like I couldn't understand why guys couldn't believe like I believe. Why don't you come every day ready for practice? Why don't you, you know, when I ask you to do something, why don't you just do it? Why do you have to ask me why, or why do you have to buck the system, you know?
Mhm.
And so, you know, realizing that, you know, not everybody is like me, that we all have different personalities. And I think that as I've matured as a coach through these years, I came that a lot of that was pride. You know, I had a pride in the way I did things and expected people to do it like I want to do it.
Mhm.
But I realized that if I'm going to get the best potential out of athletes, I have to kind of see, not to let them do things that are going to disrupt what we're trying to do, but I have to be a little bit more understanding. And that, as I matured, I realized it was more of a challenge to me. How can I connect with this steward that maybe, you know, like we talked about, has an entitlement, feels like they're owed something.
Right.
And that's totally against what I believe. But how I work with those guys and get them to get on board with me in a way that is, you know, instead of, hey, you're going to mess around or you don't agree with this, take a lap, you know,
Right.
instead of doing that, because that doesn't work anymore.
Mhm.
And so I think just, you know, for me, bias is just, you know, learning to understand, you know, that, yeah, there are things in my personality that are different in some of my athletes. And when I get rid of the pride, I realize, hey, I'm here to help this person become the best that they can be, not only in athletics, but in life. And I've got to learn how to work within them because, like you said, you know, these kids come from all different backgrounds, and you know, they might have been raised that way. Certain things that they do came from a house where, you know, another thing that was big with me is it used to bother me a lot was when kids cuss, because I don't allow it.
Right.
But instead of just getting mad at them, that understanding that, hey, they may come from an environment where that's part of their conversation.
Mhm.
And so I have to learn, okay, listen, you know, that's just something they grew up with, and I've got to learn in a way how to go about changing that.
Right.
So I just think there are a lot of biases when you really think about it. There are things that you have to adjust.
Mhm. Mhm. Adam, what does bias mean to you is with respect to athletes?
Yeah, hey, great seeing you too again. Yeah, I start thinking about my own biases, but I think about my experiences as a young man growing up, and then also my environment. I think of those two areas. So experiences and environment is what I really look at, and how I've coached today and how I've coached yesterday and last year and the year before that. I often reflect on, certain coaches that I had in my life that really kind of set the stage. And so taking all the different things, the do's and don'ts as a coach, you learn from different individuals and different coaches, and they help kind of carve out what you do as a coach today. And I would say that, you never underestimate the power of a coach, because, the things that you say, the things that you do mean a lot. And especially when you're working with younger athletes, from really looking at elementary into junior high into high school, the words that you say, the things that you do are really, really important. And so you have to be mindful of that. And so, as I reflect back on my time growing up, again, I have to look at my experiences with certain coaches, and that really helped kind of carve out who I am today, and why I'm able to coach with every player, because I always felt like the coaches that I had, Coach Buckley being one of them, that really set that culture for us early. And there was an understanding, but they were clear. He was concise, and he was very organized and structured. And so myself being a coach now, over the years, learning that, how important that really was, and really setting a really strong foundation. So it's kind of a long answer to your question, but how I base a lot of the work that I do today is based on, like I said, those two areas, looking at experience in your environment.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll welcome in Keith with this next question. Good afternoon, Keith.
Hi.
You guys bring up some good points about, looking at biases, and what I feel like is that bias is kind of inevitable. Like it's going to show up, right? And so one of the questions that I have is, how do we recognize them? Okay, so we'll ask this question this way: is either how have you recognized it, or how would you have liked to recognize your bias, right? So what would you have put in place to help you to recognize it a little bit more? For me, I would have loved to have an assistant coach that could point out those kinds of things, some circle around me that I told to, hey, really look out for any kind of slant that you see, and I'm going to be open-minded to the possibility that exists, that I show up with some kind of bias. Adam, what about you?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Making sure that you're very clear with any of your coaches. If you're a head coach or if you're an assistant coach, it's important to talk to your head coach and ask those, exactly what you just said, Isaac. But always be open to suggestions. I mean, we're in the people business. When you're coaching, you always got to be open for suggestions, but you got to surround yourself with coaches that are, if you're the head coach, make sure that they're aligned with your expectations, and vice versa. Putting that out early. Anytime that I've ever coached and served as a head coach, I always open that conversation up at the very beginning. If we're going to coach together, I want everybody to feel like they're part of something, and allowing for that dialogue to occur, not just before practice, but also after practice. Because again, we don't, it's never during practice. So those are the expectations that I put out to all of our coaches early on, is that I want to know if I'm doing something, if I'm not doing something right, or whatever slant it might be, I want to know that. And so, but creating that opportunity was very important to the success that we've had early on.
All right, Keith, I'm coming to you last, but Tom, did you have something that you would say that you would have liked to put in, or that you did put in, that was helpful to seeing your bias or noticing bias?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'd like to add to what Adam said is I think too often we as head coaches assume that players or coaches will come to us when there's those kind of problems. And we assume, and like Adam said, what you have to do is make clear expectations. I see a lot of programs where head coaches don't get together with their programs and let them say, hey, this is what we're about, and I want us to be open. And when you see something out of line or something that's bent a certain way, you need to come to me and let me know, and I will do the same. We need to be open as coaches to be able to approach each other and help each other in those situations. And I just think that you have to have that conversation, and I don't think a lot of people do. And then the other thing is, there's been a couple times when I think when you pick your captains, your leaders of your team, I think I've had a couple of times where that's actually happened, where they have been bold enough to come to me and say, Coach, I remember one time, and this was just more of a thing, but and I might have shared this before, but where I was actually coaching in the third base box, a baseball coach, and I had a captain come to me because we had a great group of athletes, but we were struggling. We just weren't. And then I was frustrated because it's like, man, why aren't we hitting better? We have a great group of guys. And I had a captain come to me and said, hey, Coach, I don't know if you realize this, but your body language down there, when we take a strike or we miss something, we feel a lot of pressure. And I had no idea. And I think it's things like that where you can trust him, and you need to have those meetings with your captains or people in charge and just say, hey, I'm learning as much, and I want you guys to be open with me. And if you see something that you think I need to know, you need to let me know.
Right.
And, just that kind of thing. And as far as things I put in place, like I said, early in my career, I didn't probably even bother with it, didn't even realize it. But I think later in my career, I began to put in, some practices just where I checked in with the kids and made sure. And I think one of the things is make it a challenge for yourself to get along with all different types, because I know there are many coaches out there, and I was like that in the beginning, that, hey, it's my way or the highway. But you know what? It's not like that anymore. Kids want to connect. They want to feel that you care for them, that you're for them. And I don't care if they have a different person. And they may come real raw and real, at you, and like, whoa, where, this guy. And I've even had coaches that I've had, players that I've had cats are now coaching with me, look and say, Coach, you would have never allowed that. But I've learned that, you know what? These are students, they're young, they're going to make mistakes. They come from different backgrounds, and I have to work with them. Now, not to say you just let everything go, because obviously you try to work with this individual and you be a little bit more patient with them. But after work with them, if there's continual problems, then we got to take care of it a different way.
Right. Yeah. And Keith, what about for you? What's something that you wish you would have put in place for to see your blind spots, or as far as bias goes, or something that you have put in place?
Well, first, thank you guys for having me. Sorry I couldn't connect all the way there, but
Right.
Great question. First, let me catch up a little and say that I feel that bias is hardwired into our DNA. We're not going to get rid of all of it. That's just human beings. But we do have to do our best to, as you say, Isaac, recognize it and then put measures into place to ensure we're being fair as possible to our players, our program, our coaches, on down the line. That being said, we need to spend time with our players, sometimes in a more non-game competitive practice type setting, maybe just having a conversation. And Coach, he hit on it briefly with meeting with captains, and that's great. And I'll go further to say, let's have conversations that don't pertain to the sport. So when you're getting to know people on a different level other than sports, you're expanding your horizon. You're expanding your view of that person, that culture, whatever they be. If they are a different culture than you are, you're getting to know their background. You're just getting to know people, right? The old montage, getting to know people, and the more you know people, your biases the bias walls tend to go down, and it allows you to think and see clearer and truer. The other thing I'll touch on is what I like to do is I like to use data and intel and information to limit bias. What do I mean by that? Great question. Let me answer it. Okay. We could use if we use football as a receiver, for an example, and we'll look at maybe how many passes we'll throw to a certain receiver and how many he's caught and how many he's dropped. Okay. How many carries a running back has had and how many times he's maybe coughed up the football, and we'll use this type of data to let them know why we're making decisions. We do it in baseball's great at it, as Coach Buckley knows. I mean, you're not gonna put a guy in the lineup if he never gets a hit, right, over a guy that's a 300 batter. Well, that's using data. That's not being biased. That's using data, and baseball's done it forever. And ironically, a lot of other sports have not. And I would use data, technology, video. You can actually show players today with game film and say, look, this is what you're doing right. This is what you're not doing so right. This guy here competing for the same spot for you does this a little bit better than you. You do that better than this, but and you can explain it to him that way. So just I think using data and information, technology, and showing them is another way.
All right. Okay, appreciate that. Yeah, so I mean, we all kind of know, like we've given some things about how to what makes it important, right? So, man, I do have biases. I don't, like what even makes it important. And as I'm as I reflect back on some of my coaching experience, like, you know, I luckily had a chance to do a bad version of bias scenario and then go back and redo that coincidentally. And in there, I feel like the person that athlete turns out to be is what's important in the driving force behind that. And so that's the question for all of us here is what makes bias even an important topic for us to talk about today? Like, what's the drive as coaches, the coaches watching, what's the drive for them? And that's mine is that I really think that our influence on players and what it means for their life and how they turn out changes whenever we can give them a fair shake. So Adam, I'll let you go first on that. What for you, what's kind of the outcome that you're looking for to
that's a great question. But I think at the end of the day, for me, it's really being organized, making sure that understanding that us as coaches, whether we like to think so or not, we're always on the platform, we're always on the stage. And so everything that we do matters, everything that we say matters, and we have to take that responsibility. We always say, being a coach is great responsibility. And I have to really agree with that, because for us, it's important that we're consistent in our messaging. If I'm working with one player and another player sees the way I'm working with that player and wants to come and be part of that, it should be open arms and saying, you know what, we're gonna work on this together. But laying out those clear expectations to players early is important. Expectations that this is what we're going to do to get better. And when we're not getting better, you're going to hear from me and we're going to talk about it. You're also going to hear from me when you're doing really well. But we're going to have a plan for you. And really, it's critical that all of your assistants, if you have one assistant or two assistants or even 8 assistants, whatever it may be, that they're all on the same page. Right. I can't emphasize that. I mean, that is just so important that we are all on the same page and that our players know that from the beginning. Right. Again, I always got to refer back to, setting those expectations early. And so everybody knows exactly what you as a head coach, what you expect. Working with athletes from the time that they're younger all the way through high school, it's easy to work on that. But the really biggest challenge for you as a head coach is to make sure that your assistants are leading by example as well, and they are following along. Again, always open for suggestions, but we're going to be on the same page. Right. All the conversation can happen before practice or after practice, never during practice. We always want to make sure that the players understand that there's some consistencies, and us as coaches, we got to make sure that we're supporting each other all the time.
Right. Keith or Tom, you guys have anything to add to that?
Go ahead, Coach.
I would just confirm what Adam said on, I just think it's real important that that consistency in how you handle players, being consistent, having that organization that they know every day when they come in, and it doesn't matter what kind of bent they have. But at the end of the day, for me too, is that, I want to know that I can work with all types of individuals. And that's the beauty of being a coach, right, is taking a group of guys with different environments and different home situations and bringing them together as a team for one cause. And I just think that's the part I really enjoy about coaching, is watching kids really, and they're looking to us. We've got to model what we want, and and they've got to see that we're not just going to blow up at them because they made a mistake or they yelled at an umpire or whatever. We're going to take them under our wing. There's going to be consequences. They're going to learn that, but we're going to take them under our wing and try to mold them into men that you're going to be proud of. And I think that's, to me, that's what I get the most joy out of coaching, more than winning. Yeah, and I love that when we bring a team together.
That's well, the same. Also, I mean, just want to add to that. I think that the same expectations we put on players. You walk into the gate, you walk into the gym, you walk onto the field. you got to be ready to go. Well, us as coaches, we got to make sure we're always ready to go. We can't have bad days. You can't. If you're, you shouldn't get into coaching if you are going back and forth with bad days. If you have a bad day, you make sure you leave it at the gate. That's my message to all coaches. Leave it at the gate, because the little guys, young ladies, young men, whoever you're coaching, they look to you, and you got to be ready. You have to be on it every single day.
Keith, any follow-up?
Yeah, sure. Those are great things there. Love them all. Why is talking about bias important? Well, quite simply, defeating bias is the right thing to do. That's why. It's just simply the right thing to do. Look, American sports is one of our pillars here of Americana in this society, and it's completely based on results driven. And if you work hard and get it done, you're going to be rewarded. And if you allow bias to break that down for you as a coach or your staff or your program, then it's just not going to work for you. Then it's self-defeating there. And there's a humanness that people gravitate towards when they see their coaches being fair, because fairness leads to honesty, and honesty leads to trust, as we talked about in prior podcasts. And without any of those, you can't build. You just can't. You got to have honesty and trust, and that comes from unbiased coaching, or as best you can. Again, we're all human, as I touched on earlier. But people see that. Even these young athletes, they're humans. They're sharp. They get it, and they're going to perform better when they know that their coaches are doing everything they can to be fair and defeating bias to the best of their abilities.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I want to close up here shortly, but 3 nuggets that I think I could hear the coaches. Hey, one of you guys has, like, I think a feedback, like maybe it's the YouTube. You just have to mute the YouTube scenario. All right, so the 3 pieces that I feel like are being said that I want to add to are, one is that the idea that we need to replace whatever we're doing with a love aspect, right? Like some aspect of empowerment, more than the idea that says like, okay, I'm just going to go at this with competition, right? And so being able to replace that, that idea with, man, I'm coming to care, I'm coming to matter, I'm coming to influence. Those ideas are really what we're trying to replace here. I remember a coach telling me, Kenny Gregory, he's actually a local coach, telling me that, man, Isaac, I always go with the idea that fair, not equal. And I love that because, every player is going to come in a little bit different, and it won't always be equal. You're going to give leeway in areas to certain players, but you're going to be fair. You're going to be fair. And so if we can replace that, or have that mindset constantly about how we're approaching and interacting, then it's going to be really helpful for us to be able to move forward. And the final thing that I'm hearing too, from our panel today is, yeah, we have to be willing to check ourselves, at the door, really being able to look at, what are my biases? What are the things that are going on inside of me? It's okay to have them. I don't need to be a judger about it. It's just, what do I have so that I can actually deal and do the things that will be helpful to winning the competition at hand. And so that, to me, is a really important thing, is for us to just be able to look at that as much as possible. So those 3 things we're going to be closing up here shortly, but one of the things that I wanted to close out with is something that I'm working on and have been spending a lot of energy on. And so that piece for me is a relationship course that I'm working on. I'm excited about having that relationship course going down. It's called Elevate Your Relationship. Super excited about it. I also created a Elevate Journal, which is a relationship journal that is a free download. So couples can go through the journal. It's only 5 days where they're working together and just kind of looking through, their relationship. So I honestly think that the more we're able to deal with relationships and those kinds of things, that's an aspect of coaching that we don't really talk about that's important and influences how we will show up on the playing field. And so I want to let you guys know that that's out there. Adam, did you have any follow-ups for anything that you got going on right now?
No, just, appreciate the conversation today. We're always working on different projects as a company. We currently have some classes going here locally, and we seem to be getting some really good feedback from the students and staff. And we're coming up next Wednesday. We're actually going to be doing our little coaching in service for several of the coaches at one of the local high schools. And really just trying to pass it on. This is an important, when we talk about the standards of practicing in terms of coaching, the standards of coaching and what we're putting out there. It's very important that we always remember that coaching is evolving every single day. And in order for us to be the most effective coach, we got to be willing to listen. And we also got to be willing to reach out. And that's part of what today and what we're doing here through the Coaches Conversation Cafe is giving us an opportunity to reach out and share. We can do this together, but being a coach is a very, very special position, and we got to continue to do everything we can to be the very best at it. We have to make sure that we're educating ourselves and that it's ongoing.
All right. Coach Buckley, I'm going to finish up with you, but Keith, did you have something that you wanted to close on?
No, not at all. I'm good. Thank you. It's a great conversation. Thanks for bringing it up. I think it needs to be touched on. It's very important.
Okay. And Coach Buckley.
Yeah, just great conversation today. I just think this is the area that we don't talk about a lot, and I think you're right, Isaac. It just is an area that we need to take a look at and make sure that that we're being fair, and that we all have our biases, and that's okay. But it's learning how to work with athletes to get the best out of them, and just finding ways to make sure that we're being fair and working with athletes.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys all joining in today. Man, super powerful conversations. Good thoughts to be able to have. If you guys have any additions or any other thoughts, that you want to hear us talk about or discuss, or if you even have addition to what we're already discussing and you think we missed something, we're all willing to have more discussion about all these topics again later. Until next week, we will see you guys soon. Take care, enjoy your week, and yeah, we'll catch you guys in the fall.